they call their dogs babies. In effect, it is an animal that we're bringing into our household and expecting it to live by human rules in a very close proximity.
Creative Conversations.
Hey Zouk family, welcome back. It's another week and another opportunity to meet an industry expert on the podcast. And this week is quite unique because most of us face the headache of having to manage personnel. But Steph, our friend over in Singapore, makes a living by helping us not just manage ourselves and personnel, but mostly animals. Steph, how are you? How is Singapore?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on. And I'm sure actually the real reason you want me on is because, Vinny, come on, Mr. Ball, come. Sorry, he's clearly having his nap. Come on, up.
Ah, yes, this is exactly who I did.
You want to see the superstar, right? That's the real superstar there.
It's Vinny. And that brings me perfectly onto the topic of why we're chatting to you. So for the last decade, you've been a dog behaviorist, which is an incredibly interesting job. And it's one that I think that more and more people rely on, as getting a pet is obviously, well, both for, let's say you do it for security purposes or you do it just for pure enjoyment of having the companionship. It's immensely popular, but then people have the conundrum of how to make this animal behave in the format that you want it to as a human. And then they come out to you. So how did you get started in this in the first place?
So I've really had dogs and been fortunate enough that my parents have allowed me to have my own dogs. So that's been really helpful. And I guess making sure that I know how to take care of my own dog, the responsibility that comes with it. My parents have always ensured that it is my responsibility and my sister's responsibility. So kind of naturally, it became nature, I guess, for me.
And
yeah.
It was obviously a passion that drove you to get into it from a business perspective.
Yes, it was actually midway during my studies that, a lot of like the pet shows were coming on National Nat Geo and things like that. And I kind of went to my mom, can I change my job to become a vet? And obviously in most typical Asian parents are like, nope, I think being an accountant is a lot more, it's the safe route to go, right? So I did all of that. I did love my corporate life, but on the side, there was always this like niggling feeling saying, try it. So whilst I was working in London, I did actually kind of almost a trainer, a local trainer. And I say, hey, I'm going to work for you for free. Can I just see what it's like to be a dog trainer, a dog behaviorist? And I found it really, really intriguing and interesting. So that's kind of like how I started transitioning my career from the corporate to what I actually do now, day in, day out.
And how do you learn to do what you do? Because there must be a ton of theory involved, because it's basically a psychological pursuit more than a physical pursuit. And it's something we'll come on later. Many people will try and, well, even with children decades ago, will try and manage behavioral patterns through force. But really, it must be a ton of theory that goes into communicating with animals.
I think it's, yes, it is theoretical to a certain extent. But if you ask me, it's the hands-on, because just like humans, every dog's going to learn in a very different manner. The motivations, every dog is going to have a different motivation. Let it be play or let it be food, for example. Some dogs have such high anxiety levels that this kind of motivations are suppressed because of the level of anxiety. So you have to kind of think out the box and be creative with the way you approach each problem with a dog, or how you want to structure the goals that each dog owner may have.
And can I ask you, I mean, it's such a vast topic and you look after many different breeds and you've done so for such a long time, but what are the basic essentials that you see every single time? Is it more of a human not being able to behave properly with the dog itself by humanizing it, or trying to communicate within the wrong format? What are the basic errors that people make?
I think that you totally hit it, right on the point. End up humanizing their dogs. They call their dogs babies. In effect, it is an animal that we're bringing into our household and expecting it to live by human rules in a very close proximity. So there should be very clear rules and boundaries for the dog itself. So it's important that we keep in mind that we are a completely different species from the dogs, and how we fulfill those needs of the dog to ensure, we can all live harmoniously in like the same household.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm sure, and something that I know you're mega passionate about, it's perfect to get this thought process started young. Some people I know are petrified of dogs just because they had a bad experience as a very small child, and that fear has never left. But you work very closely with integration, especially with Vinny, with school children, in order to help crush those kind of stereotypes.
Yeah, I do believe that education is super important. I've knocked on many doors of schools. It's still very hard to break through and get into the school system, just because in Singapore, dogs are not necessarily welcome in a lot of public spaces just yet. And I understand the health and safety rules around it, but we have been super, super fortunate that Vinny has been invited into some preschools, and it's been amazing watching the kids, those who are really, really afraid at the start of like the session that we have. And once they watch their friends warm up to Vinny, see how he plays fetch, or once we have the little storytelling about how to approach dogs, it's really heartwarming to see them grow in confidence and learn how to love and not only also respect the animal.
I want to ask you a couple of questions because there's a few hot topics flying around now. Some of them have been long-standing. One that I remember from the UK, even when I left nearly a decade ago, was the fear of dangerous breeds. I mean, we're talking about Rottweilers, German Shepherds, Pit Bulls, but I would go as far as to say that no dog is born a dangerous breed. It's more about the way that they're treated and the atmosphere to which they're kept. What is your thought process on that?
I think I use the term very loosely, breedist. I think some people can kind of stereotype certain breeds, and they may have certain particular behaviors that they may display, the reason they were used in the first place. So for example, like the Rottweilers are very driven, or the German Shepherds are very driven. So under the wrong ownership, what may happen is the dog is not directed consistently, and that's where the dog can become reactive in the wrong way. So whenever I get owners who can actually ask me, look, what kind of dog would suit me? I love those kind of questions, because that allows each human and owner to really think about what's my lifestyle, what kind of dog would I want in my life? Would it suit my family? Do I plan in the future? It is to a certain extent because of the way the humans have bred certain breeds, they will have certain characteristics, but whether they're dangerous or not, that's a complete myth, right? It's just whether, for example, you want to go down the route of having a dog that's more energetic, prefers sleeping by the couch, or you want a dog like Vinny who goes 20 clicks a day and then turns around and asks you for, let's go for our next 20.
I think it's sad. Sometimes I see, especially in the hot tropical climates, people have huskies because they look nice, but we know that huskies are designed in a way genetically to survive in sub-zero temperatures because of the thick skin that they've got, the coats that they have. And some of these bigger dogs, I mean, even for instance, bulldogs would really struggle in tropical heat, yet people get them for aesthetic reasons. I think do you find that there are inappropriate pairings? You always say that people come to you and ask you, what kind of dog should I get for my personality? But there's certain breeds that are not really suitable for this part of the world.
I think that it depends on the owners on being how aware. You'll be surprised. I do have huskies who can do pack walks longer than probably very flat-coated dogs. Because of the way their fur is designed, they can either trap hot or cold air. So each owner needs to be very aware of what their dog is like on a typical day. And obviously, if it's a hot day, you need to be aware of the changes that you see in your dog. Are they walking in a very dazed manner? Do they look really hot? Then obviously you need to kind of stop your walks, watch the weather, and understand what the limitations of your dog is, because it's not just the breed, it's also the age of the dog, right? So I could be used to, with Vinny being such an active dog since he was young, as he's aging to being 10 now, I don't need to think about he seems to want to go, but mind is one thing, body is another. And I think he is struggling with that. So I need to consciously kind of slow him down and say, hey, you need to take a break, because he's having so much fun. He doesn't really think about it. He just wants to go and go and go. So it's more, I think, do the breeds adapt to the sort of the temperature of each country? I do believe that they do, but still, because of the code, like what you said, or the breeding mechanism of a flat-nosed dog, owners need to be aware of what the baseline is for their dog, and then move from there every time they're out with their dog.
Can I ask you, is it for your industry in particular, have you found that over the years the demand for you has increased? And what's a day in the life of a dog behaviorist?
Yes, surprisingly, it has increased. And I think that's a really good thing. And that's the exact reason why I moved back from London to Singapore, because I felt that there was sort of a gap in the way people were thinking in terms of education and dog training, dog behavioral training. In Asian countries, most typically, they would only call a trainer in when there's a problem. But in the shift in the last couple of years, I've been getting a lot of puppies, a lot of foundation work being done, which is great, because it's much better to be sort of building a good foundation rather than be reactive to a situation where a dog is badly. So I think that's a really, really good perspective to have in these days. And honestly, since COVID, I think because of the number of people who haven't been able to travel, a lot of people now have the time to start a really good foundation. So it has increased tremendously. Day in, day out is because I do a lot of one-on-one sessions, and that's how I feel I'm able to connect and sort of tailor each sessions. It's a lot about seeing different houses, different people, different dogs. So that's a really interesting perspective for me to see sort of the wide variety of people and dogs that may come down my path.
And a common question that I would be given to ask you is, can you also train husbands and wives? Can you toilet train husbands to put the toilet seat down and stuff?
I've tried. I get that question all the time, and usually that's actually the top two questions. I go in, I work with the dog, I show the owners how to work with their dogs, and quite often within the first session I get, do you do kids as well? Do you train kids as well? And then when the husband goes out of the room, that's, the wives usually ask that kind of question as well.
Can I ask you on a more serious topic? Choke collars. What is your thought process on this? I mean, for instance, when I had my German Shepherd in the UK, the police were very fond. German Shepherd has very thick skin around the neck. They have very thick fur, and it's a good way to maintain control, especially if you're not of the same weight or muscular build as the dog. But then I know that it's also a huge topic of cruelty, especially shock collars. Where do you sit on the fence with regards to these?
So, I'm really glad you brought this up, because there has been a very strong drive by SPCA Singapore at the moment to ban e-collars as well. Well, e-collars, they use the term e-collars and shock collars very loosely, and also prong collars. So these two things have been on their agenda to ban. The way I train is very much about what I feel is going to get you the most engagement, meaning the dog actually wants to do something for you with the owner. So, there's many tools that you can use: the choke collar, the food, the treats, the love, the toys, for example. And then there's, on the other side, there's like the choke collar, the electric collar. Look, all of these tools can be used in a very good way. But it is the lack of education and awareness about the different tools that actually gives it such a bad name. So, you have a couple of like bad apples who may use certain things incorrectly, and then it turns out to be an aversive tool, which is really sad, because the call to ban the tools now actually means that the dogs that may bloom under these tools may never have the opportunity to learn in that particular way. I think what this agenda is driving is it's making us being very narrow-minded about the way we teach the dogs. What I feel is more important should be a drive on, either having a regulation on how these tools are being used, or like a board that says, hey, these are trainers who have been trained, to use these tools fairly. you could go to them, and different trainers are going to be good in different tools as well. So for example, like, I would admit I'm not the best in the choke collar just because I, might not have the timing right, but I'm really great with, different tools like the gentle leader or the halty or the electric collar. It really depends on what the owners are looking for.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, it's like every single form of discipline that's out there. It can either be used excessively or it can be used for the right format. And I guess it depends on how people are utilizing it or whether they're abusing it. So I think you raise a very good point. Steph, before we wrap up, I want to ask you a question that I ask everyone. And yours is two-folded, actually. The first one is, you've obviously pursued your dream. You sat there once, you watched National Geographic, you said to your mom you wanted to do this. What would be your advice to people who see what you do, love what you do? And this is twofold, as I said. The first part is, what's your advice to anyone who wants to pursue their dreams that is unorthodox, especially when your parents might be inflicting, quite rightly, a pressure for you to take a secure or a safer route? And the second is, what's your advice for people who might want to do what you do? There might be people who want to be a vet but don't want to deal with the constant potential of having to put an animal down, or which I know some people who would love to be vets can't do. They don't want the emotional baggage of it. So what would be your advice for someone who did what you did, which is change career, follow your passion, and 10 years you've driven to get to where you are? And the second is, what if your career is specifically what they'd want to do? What's your advice?
So in terms of career changing, I think that I was lucky enough to be able to do both. So to be honest, I kind of trialed it a little bit. I did my corporate job Monday to Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, I was kind of doing the stuff that I liked. And then I think there was a lot of planning that went into it, kind of thinking about, financially what I could afford, if assuming I didn't earn enough money. So it is about first dipping your toes in and seeing, when your passion is one thing, but if it ends up being something that is going to pay your bills, the mindset can possibly change. So I would say dip your toes in, that's one. And secondly, save enough money and put a timeline to where you want to get to. So if you try it out for, say, you're going to give yourself a year and it's not working out, then you need to also be realistic about, where your passion's going to really take you. Or is it a sort of realistic job for you? Is it something that you need to go back, do a little bit more research about, try different methods, try different avenues of how you may learn or apply the techniques that you've learned in the past. So, it may not be something that I would recommend most people to hit on straight away in a career change, but kind of try it in transition and also set a timeline so you know where your goal is towards the end of it. And in terms of doing what I do currently, I do have interns who come in and shadow, so they have a taste of what's going on. So I think it's really, what we show in social media or what we explain. I would say get on the ground, go speak to people who are actually doing those kind of jobs and really understand what it's like, make decisions on that.
And lastly, how do people get in touch with you if someone is interested, or they would like to use your skill set, or they'd like to speak to you? Because you don't just do behaviorism, you also have your own brand of leads. How can people check that out? And secondly, how can they get in touch with you personally?
Yes. So I am on Instagram. That's probably like the best. You can obviously follow Vinny because he's like the superstar of my Instagram. That's HappyTails Asia. That's tails like waggy tails. So it's HappyTailsAsia. I can spell. So it's HappyTails Asia. And yes, thank you for bringing that up. I have recently launched my own brand of leashes as well. It's a dream of mine. That dream has become a reality. That was my pivot, I suppose, over the time, just like how Zouk has amazingly done their own pivots. So my leash brand is called Mudley Crew. So I hope that everyone can kind of look out for that. They've got really cute doggies on there. And a couple of my clients who have been, very supportive of the leash as well. So yeah, HappyTails Asia and Mudley Crew.
That's fantastic. And we'll be posting your social media handle at the bottom of the interview all the way through. Steph, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. Definitely about the most unique career that we've heard of. And also the fact that you've had it for 10 years, congratulations on such an ongoing success. I'm sure a huge part to play in that. But also, it's very brave to turn your back on what would be seen as a secure and standardized career to follow your passion, and you've made a success out of it. And I love talking to people who followed their heart, because you must love going to work every single day.
Yes, and honestly, that has been a massive change. I feel like the real, when I knew that I made the right decision when I came back from a holiday, and when I'm so excited to go back to work.
Yeah, that's very special. And it must be, on occasion, it must be a lot nicer to deal with dogs than humans.
Yes, it always helps to have a very drooly, happy, excited, bouncy dog to say hi to.
Yeah, someone always be. See, I don't know if my colleagues are always responsive in that manner, but Alex, who course the cocktail videos, drools often, but not often in my way, in my direction. Can we say goodbye to Vinny before we go?
Yes, I will wake him up. Vinny, come on up. He's having a big yawn, but Vinny, come on. Say bye. Come say bye. Oh,
bye,
he's having a research. I'm sure he's excited to see you in Botanics real soon.
I hope so. I look forward to seeing you both. But thanks, Steph. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. Bye, Vinny.
Thanks for having us on.
Person
Bye.